So I've got a tech update. I've been testing our build and deploy system, and the automation's been helping a lot. I've started to realize though that this concept of separating environments between dev, staging and production, it's actually not enough, because when you write things in these three separate environments, you try to make them as similar as possible, but you can't ever really make them identical, since things like IP addresses are different, even references to particular names might be different. They may have _dev, they may have _stage appended on the end of them. So it's not always possible to create the highest level of reliability with that. And it's certainly helpful, but it's probably not enough. So I'm starting to think about what we can do if we move towards the idea of blue-green deployments. So we would essentially spin up resources through our dev, our stage, and then when we were actually releasing to production, we'd be releasing to either a blue or green area. And that would allow us to run two deployments in tandem and switch over when we decided that the other deployment was functioning. So you might be using green and then you push to blue, and then you test blue and you find that it's functional, and then you can switch everyone over to blue. Now, that's really easy in a web scenario where you're able to just switch everything over, but it's not quite so trivial for visual effects, because we probably have to think about what's going to happen when we've got a centralized NAS resource, a storage resource that we can't really just clone, many terabytes or petabytes of data willy-nilly over to another environment. It's not efficient, it'll cost money, it's probably not the right way to do things. And when productions start to get up, into the very high-end scenarios, that's just not really going to be manageable. So I have to think about how we're gonna approach that. And I think that most of the dynamic parts of the infrastructure, everything from say workstations to virtual workstations to render nodes, pretty much everything else apart from the storage is destroyed and spun up with each version that gets released. But what we might have is a separate account to handle these more centralized resources, and those resources could also have their own blue-green environment for when an update's required. But the idea there is generally that whatever that NAS deployment is, it gets to live there. And so we would have like a separate AWS account that would be in charge of your storage resource or any other persistent resources. And we would have separate accounts for all of our other environments like dev, stage, blue, green, whatever. So we would then be sharing those resources between the AWS accounts within the same shared VPC, because if you share across these VPCs, these virtual network containers, then you're charged something quite significant. Like, I know they say 1 cent per gigabyte, but actually if you think about it, like at 100 gigabytes I'm at $1 already, and then I could easily be running a terabyte simulation daily. So if I was to think about cases where I want to do high-end effects work, paying an extra $10 for a simulation iteration isn't really something that excites me, so I'd like to try and avoid that. So if we try to keep everything within the same VPC, but we allow the different accounts to hook in to that VPC and then spin up their resources to use that centralized NAS, it's going to open up a lot of really interesting possibilities, because it solves another problem, which is that when it comes to storage, I want everyone to be able to have a lot of freedom there, and you shouldn't have to be a coder to implement some replacement for storage. So by having a centralized account to manage a storage resource, it also allows people, if they choose to manually spin up a storage solution. And that is super exciting, because it means that when you've got all these new storage solutions coming along, to run deployment tests, we don't have to write code to do that. We can spin them up manually quite easily and allow them to just live that way. So we don't have to be dependent on code to get a storage to get a storage solution up and running. And I'm even thinking about, in the future, that might allow us to do things like have an A/B test for storage performance and cost. We could have multiple storage solutions all in that central environment, and run multiple cost and performance tests to find out what's working better for our needs. So I'm really excited about that possibility. That's certainly something I want to look at as soon as I can get past the next stage, which is smoothing out the initialization process. So allowing people to have a wizard that guides them through the initialization of all their secrets. And there is something already there for that, but it needs to be, I need to go over it and improve it further. I also don't want to spend too much time working on that wizard for now, because I intend to replace the way that secrets are managed in the not too distant future, certainly by the end of the year, because when we use something like Ansible Crypt, which is how we currently manage our secrets, it's just not quite up to scratch. It's pretty hard, because you have to customize the handling, the encryption, the decryption, the generation of keys. You have to create your own, scripts to guide people through that process. And I would just feel a bit more comfortable if I was to move in a direction of using HashiCorp Vault to solve that problem, which does provide us with a UI. It's battle hardened, and it is a highly recommended way of being able to store our secrets in a secure and more manageable way. So definitely migrating the secrets over to HashiCorp Vault is probably the next major move that I really want to solve, because it will also start to make it a bit more accessible for people to perhaps not have to spend so much time worrying about how they're handling their own secrets.